Stefan Baumann's The Grand View is funded in part by
Plein Air Magazine, for people who love painting outdoors. pleinairmagazine.com.
and by
Masterpiece Canvas, makers of fine art canvases. We supply the canvas, you supply the vision.
and by
paintingfromnature.com, a website for artists seeking inspiration, advice, and knowledge to master painting from nature. paintingfromnature.com.
In Orville, California, August 29, 1911, a man crouched in fear in the corral of a slaughterhouse, dogs aggressively keeping him pinned against the interior. The caretakers concluded that the man, draped in the remnants of covered wagon canvas, was wild and immediately notified authorities. He was ultimately identified as Ishi, the last of the Yahi people, and placed in the care of the anthropology department at University of California, where he began to teach the history of his people and their culture that had been lost. He lived his remaining years in the campus museum, where he ultimately succumbed to tuberculosis in 1916. "86 years later, Ishi returned home.
My name is Stefan Baumann, and welcome to the Grand View. And today we're at Mount Lassen Volcanic National Park. This park was established in 1916 after a series of volcanic activity. Today, it stands as a testament to how these areas can recover after such violent actions. So come along with me as we explore this magnificent place called Mount Lassen Volcanic National Park.
The hydrothermal system at Lassen is an expression of the heat that's associated with a magma chamber or body of hot rock beneath the Lassen volcanic center. Water from the surface, either rainwater or snowmelt, percolates down, gets down 5 or 6 or 7 kilometers and is heated by this hot body of rock and is converted to steam. And it comes back up along fractures and pathways until it gets to the near surface and accumulates as a reservoir about 1 kilometer deep. At that depth, the water boils and creates the features that we see in the park, which are mostly fumaroles. One of the reasons, though, that we started doing geologic mapping at Lassen was to understand the geology to provide a framework for interpreting the hydrothermal system. Bumpus was an early pioneer. His name was Kendall Van Hook Bumpus, and he gave his name to Bumpus Hell because he fell into one of the hot springs there at one time and burnt his leg. It's reported that he lost his leg in one of those features. The eruption of 1915 started actually in 1914 on May the 30th when a steam blast explosion occurred at the summit of Lassen Peak. Over the next year, 180 of these explosions blasted a crater out at the summit of Lassen Peak, where there previously was no crater. And in mid-May of 1915, a lava dome started to grow in that crater. It was first seen on the night of May the 14th, when hot rock was seen rolling down the mountain in the evening. Over the next few days, that lava dome grew until on the evening of May the 19th, it had completely plugged up the vent. This caused an explosion at the base of the dome, which blasted hot rock out onto the snow-covered upper surface of Lassen Peak. This started an avalanche of snow and hot rock, which rolled down the mountain or flowed down the mountain through the devastated area. That was followed very rapidly by a big mud flow, or lahar, which was caused by melting of all of that snow by the hot rock. Both of these events went down through the devastated area and into Upper Hat Creek, but mostly down Lost Creek and all the way out to near Old Station.
And the best way to see Mount Lassen National Park is to climb to the very top of Mount Lassen itself.
It's a gentle wilderness. I mean, it is. You can get out, and I hiked yesterday through the backcountry and hiked for 5 hours and didn't see one person. You know, to be able to do that in California, I think is an amazing thing still. But it's a gentle place. It's not so rugged or dangerous that if you came out, you know, you have to really worry about it. And of course, there's all people's issues about bears and wild animals and things. It's just, they're not big issues. This is a place where you can learn a lot and have a chance to connect with yourself, I think. Have some downtime to look at your life and do a lot of reflection. If you got to the top of Lassen Peak and had a good look around, or to any of the high peaks here and looked around, you would see that every single mountain in this park is a volcano of some kind, right? Lassen's this big plug dome. You've got stratocones, you've got cinder cones, you've got every type of volcano on Earth is found in this park. And that itself, the soil, the volcanic soil, I think, plays a big part in the plants and animals that are here, especially, you know, the plants themselves. We get a tremendous snowfall here in the winter, and yet summers are incredibly dry. So plants have to evolve being buried under snow 6 or 7 or 8 months a year, having a short, wet growing season in the beginning, and then being able to live through a dry time at the end of summer before, you know, you get the fall rains and snow again. So animals have to be able to, and plants have to be able to do both the dry thing and the wet thing. The ground's really porous, right? I mean, it's volcanic soil, water soaks in really quickly. So once the spring melt starts in you know, April, May, and by June the snow's gone, boom, things got to be able to soak in that water quickly, use it to their advantage, and then basically, you know, shut down by the middle of summer, because we're not going to get, or probably aren't going to get any rain or snow until October, November again. So there's that real dry time. So plants have to evolve to those conditions. And you see a lot of the things that you see in other parts of California. I mean, we have you know, ponderosa and Jeffrey pine and the fir, and lodgepole, that's a very common tree in parts of the park. And a lot of the wildflowers are similar to what's in the Cascades and in the Sierras. The wildflowers are spectacular. And, you know, in an average year, we had kind of a drought year this year, so we had definitely less than normal rain and snowfall. But in an average year, you come up in June, and there's still big snowbanks all around. And it's not uncommon to have a big snowbank feeding right into like a wet meadow, and there's flowers already blooming, and yet here's these big snowpacks right next door. Lassen is spectacular.
Well, we've just spent 2 hours climbing the summit of Mount Lassen. And for anybody who makes the effort to come up here, they get a wonderful 360-degree view of all of California. From up here, we look right into the heart of Lassen and into the crater itself.
Probably more of Lassen, what's considered Lassen National Park, is actually part of what I would call the Pit River Tribe's land area. The other indigenous tribal group that we shared those sacred places with, the Hat Creek people or the Pit River people, the Otsagewi, the northern Maidu people, the mountain Maidu people, Yahi people, but what my grandmother used to call the Nosok people, which Ishi was from. He became known as the last so-called wild Indian in North America. But he and his family survived, and survived as they'd always lived prior. They found him near Orville, California. They put him in jail first. And the anthropologists and scientists of that period, they got consent from the United States to transfer Ishi supposedly to the custody and protection of the University of California Department of Anthropology. From 1911 to 1914, then he died from the diseases again that of the times, tuberculosis, and he taught him what he could, and I think he wanted to record who his people really were. He wanted the world to know about his people. But Ishi's remains, and he was scared to death of of autopsies, because it was totally opposite of what Indians do. And to cut off a person's head was one of the worst things that you could do to an Indian from our point of view. And he was never allowed to return to his home. There was always kind of like a rumor that they had done this to him, but the United States always denied it. And they wrote a lot of books, they made movies, said they did good things to him and for him. The Smithsonian determined that we were the closest relatives of Ishi, and our position from the very beginning was always, at least from my point of view, was that the exploitation of Ishi is over. He needs to be put back in his own home, in a safe place, and that's what we did do. It's unknown, except to basically a handful of Indians, where Ishi's resting place is today.
Well, we spent a couple of days here at Lassen, and I found the most ideal place to paint for our sketch today. It's Manzanita Lake at the base of Lassen. Right now, when we look across the lake, there's a lot of haze over the mountain. And that's because up in Oregon, there's a lot of forest fires, and a lot of the smoke from those fires are causing a haze across the mountain in the background. We're going to take this misty, hazy scene and create a wonderful, wonderful emotional painting. By eliminating all the detail because of the mist and the haze, what happens is that we concentrate on the essence, and we'll concentrate more on the composition, the way things are put together. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to squeeze out ultramarine blue. And ultramarine has a little bit more red in it, and I think it will lend itself better for some of the hazes. We're going to have a foreground, middle ground, and background. Nice 3 sections. And then I'm going to break the sections this way also. So I'm going to go ahead and bring all of my interest points, all of my main highlights, all of my shadows, everything that's going to make this painting absolutely wonderful will be in this little tiny square. Now in the background, we have a forest that comes down to the water. And the water is a little further back in the lake than my foreground trees here. And I want to make sure that this line isn't in the center of my canvas. Common mistake that beginning students do is that they put everything in the center. And we're going to start laying in the mountain. And actually, since I have a rag, I'm going to go ahead and just take blue. I'm just going to put in a ghost, since there is no detail showing through except a little bit of snow. I'm actually going to sketch this with my rag. Painting outdoors is really quite simple if you relax and take your time. People are always in a rush when they're painting outdoors, and they always want to get the sketch done so that they can start painting. And if you relax and take your time at the beginning and you don't make your mistakes and you correct them as you go along, you'll see that painting outdoors is really quite simple. And to the left, I've got these wonderful willow trees, and I'm just going to mix up my Viridian green and very quickly just throw those in. I'm just concentrating on trying to get the dark in. I want to get my sketch done so that we can start painting, and I just need the dark there as a base. Most of my sketch hinges on the background, making sure that the drawing is right. Now I'm going to switch to my larger brush, and I'm going to start painting Mount Lassen. See, it actually can be fun to paint a scene like this where the detail is gone and we can just concentrate on the values. And I'm going to be very careful when I get up around the trees. But to be sure that this is correct at this point, I'm going to go to my darker value, which is the row of trees right in front here. And I'm going to lay that in. I want to make sure that there are value changes and that my value changes are correct. Sometimes it's difficult to see that until you actually see it on the canvas. And right now I can definitely see the changes in my colors. So that tells me that there's a nice set of values that are happening. And while I'm at it, I'm just going to flick my brush up this way, just to create the illusion of some pine trees. I'm going to do another row of trees. Now this is the darkest value that I mixed up. This has more burnt sienna and ultramarine blue in it. I'm not going to worry too much about detail, but I am worried about are the layers. See, 1, 2, 3 layers. Those are values. They're almost all the same color, except they're just darker variations of those tones. So with this color, I'm very softly flicking into my dark, and I'm softening the edges. I'm working around the trunks of my trees. Now with my atmosphere around my mountain finished, I'm going to start working on my sky. I'm going to switch to my large brush again, and I'm going to clean it out. And I'm going to take my lightest value. This was the color that I originally mixed up. And I'm just going to take my brush and just very quickly just lay it in. And I'm going to go real close to the mountain, because the first thing I want to make sure is that my value is correct. I'm going to push that color right up to my mountain. And I'm going to see if there is a change of value. It's hard to tell until you actually get it on there. And yes, we're getting a beautiful, beautiful silhouette of the mountain. You can just see that beautiful silhouette. I want to start getting the glaciers in before we start working on our foreground. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush, and I'm going to mix white in with my sky color. I want almost a pure white, but I want the white to be the same atmospheric color that I have in the rest of my painting. I don't want to use pure white. I want to mix that color together, and this brush is a nice little detail brush. And very carefully, I'm going to start placing these glaciers in. Okay, now with our glaciers finished, we're ready to start working on the water. I'm going to switch to my flat brush again, and I'm going to clean it out, dry it off, and I'm going to mix my blue in with my white and start painting in my water. Just back and forth. Bring that color right down to my log, around my grass, over to the shore. There's not a lot of reflection in this scene because of the wind that's stirring up the water. So we're not going to worry too much about reflections. The only reflection is that of the sky. Don't bring a lot of attention to your water. That's the least important in this painting. Okay, now with all my detail in and all my darks in, I'm going to switch to my fan brush and I'm going to squeeze out some highlight color, cadmium yellow medium. And I'm going to take my fan brush and clean it out. I'm going to mix my viridian green with my cad yellow medium. We could even introduce just a little bit of the sky color. Now using the corner of my brush, lots of paint, we're going to start laying in our highlights, just using the corner of our brush. Now remember, I said that this little square in the middle of our canvas is going to be our main focal point. So we want the brightest area right here. We're going to make the sun just beam right down onto this area. Take your time and relax. Listen to the birds. Now you can actually see that original color that I painted the canvas, the orange tone. That's a good thing to have. When you get back from it, you'll get this glow of light coming through the trees. You don't need to cover the whole canvas, and that's one of the beauties of having the canvas covered prior to you going out on location. Now with this yellow-green on our palette, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to start laying some of the yellow-green in the foreground, and we're going to start putting in the yellow-green in the distant trees. So by mixing this same color again, just use the corner of the fan brush and just lay in the top of the trees. And while I have that paint on my brush, I'm also going to paint the shoreline. The shoreline's a little bit in shadow, so I'm just going to mix these colors together. You load up the brush the same way, just by hitting your palette, picking up the paint, then you hit your canvas and lay on the paint. Just bring this color all the way across to your foreground. This is the silhouette of the trees. Now you can see the backlighting in progress. See the backlighting? The light's behind the trees. You can see the trunks. Makes the whole forest three-dimensional. We can put in some wonderful little branches. And by bringing these trees to the foreground, we create a lot of depth now. So now this whole shoreline is coming at us. Now since we have this color on our brush, we'll lay in the base for our little tree here. There's actually a couple of little trees. And then we have a wonderful bush that looks like it's kind of weather worn and beaten. It comes up into my sky, and it will help with all these lines going out of my canvas. It will help keep the viewer in a little bit. I'm going to put some leaves on my tree, and I'm using the same color as my light green that I used in the rest of the painting. I'm just using the corner. This greenery is just breaking through, just creating a little bit of depth. And now with all of this detail done, we're ready to sign the painting. Expanded instructional DVDs that feature an hour-long demonstration of today's painting and other paintings in the series are available at the Grandview by calling 1-800-511-1337. Join us on our website, thegrandview.org, and get more information about our show. There you can download our free book, Everything You Need to Know About Outdoor Painting, along with a free diagram of today's subject. Stefan Baumann's The Grand View is funded in part by
paintingfromnature.com, a website for artists seeking inspiration, advice, and knowledge to master painting from nature. paintingfromnature.com.
and by
Masterpiece Canvas, makers of fine art canvases. We supply the canvas, you supply the vision.
and by
Plein Air Magazine, for people who love painting outdoors. pleinairmagazine.com